Hi, I'm Jeremy, the Zoo Nerd, coming to you live from my backyard in Los Angeles, California. How's everyone doing today? I hope you're well, happy, healthy, and having some fun. Today in our critter chat, we're going to talk about a very unique and unusual animal. Today we're talking about the binturong. Binturongs are also called bear cats, but they are neither a bear nor a cat. But they do kind of look like both species combined. They are actually a member of the same order as both of those. So the order is carnivore. So that's actually a very big group of mammals, usually eating meat, but more specifically defined by their tooth structure. And that would include bears, that would include cats, and it includes the animal we call a bear cat, the binturong. But they are actually a member of the Viveridae family, which is civets, mongoose, and genets. Those animals may also be a bit unfamiliar to you. Think of a meerkat, kind of like that, although this animal and a meerkat have very little in common. Binturongs come from Southeast Asia. They live in the countries Bangladesh, Bhutan, Cambodia, China, India, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Nepal, the Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam. That may sound like there's a big range of them, but it's actually not that huge of a range. They're just little portions of some of those countries. Like in the Philippines, they're only on one island. They're only in like one little province in southern China. They're only in the far, far eastern portion of India. So they're a little bit limited in many of those countries. For me, I had never seen nor heard of a binturong until I was in college. And I saw one on an animal show on TV and my mind was blown. This was a pretty big animal that I had never heard of. And it didn't really resemble anything I was familiar with. So it was pretty eye-opening to me to first learn about binturongs. They are arboreal, which we've talked about a little bit before. That means tree dwelling. So they typically spend most of their time up in the trees. But unlike a monkey or other tree dwelling mammals, they have a hard time going from tree to tree out on those little branches because they're pretty heavy and they're not very good at jumping. Although that's in the science books. It says they're not good at jumping. I've actually seen some jump and I was pretty impressed. But they don't jump huge distances, and only if there's a really good platform for them to land on. So to get from one big group of trees to another big group of trees, they come down to the ground and walk across the ground. And when they do, they have some really cool adaptations that help them maneuver up and down trees. For instance, they are the only Old World, so that's Asia, Europe, and Africa, mammal with a prehensile tail. That means they can hold on to things with their tails. They can use that big tail to help anchor them. Now, when they're babies, they can hold just by their tail, but as an adult, they weigh too much, so their tail doesn't have enough strength to hold on to them entirely, but it can help support them. As they're going down a tree, they can also rotate their ankle joints in their hands and in their feet to kind of turn their claws up and help hold on better as they climb down a tree. So they can actually climb down a tree face first, which is pretty rare. Not a lot of animals can do that. Squirrels can, but squirrels only weigh like 4 pounds. Binturongs are 10 times that size. As well as the prehensile tail, they're one of only 2 carnivores in the world that have a prehensile tail. The other is an animal called the kinkajou that lives in South America. We'll talk more about kinkajous another time. Technically, they're carnivores, okay? So they're grouped with other animals that eat meat, and they do eat a little bit of meat. So specifically, they're an omnivore as far as what they eat. But most of their diet, most of the food they eat, is fruit. 80% of wild binturongs eat, of what they eat is fruit. Specifically figs. They love to eat figs. Figs are also very, very common across much of that range where they live in Southeast Asia. They will on occasionally eat some other things like some seeds, nuts, flowers. They'll definitely eat a little bit of meat like birds, bird eggs, rodents, maybe some little lizards or other reptiles. And they have been observed eating other dead animals that have died from other ways. But typically, like I said, 80% of their food is fruit. They are specifically known to eat a type of fig called a strangler fig. Strangler figs are very large trees that have very contorted root systems that kind of are above ground that make it really gnarly. They're really cool in like a jungle setting. But they are one of the main seed dispersers for that type of tree, as they're one of the few animals that eat a lot of it, and then as they walk throughout the forest and poop, their seeds of the figs are still very viable. In fact, by being eaten by a binturong, they're actually more likely to germinate or become a plant than if they just fall off the tree and rot on the ground. They are typically crepuscular, so that means active in the morning and in the afternoon. Sometimes, depending on their range and what else is going on in their forest and weather-wise, they become a little more nocturnal in some areas. But occasionally they're very active during the daytime too. So they're flexible as far as if they're active at day, night, dawn, or dusk, based upon what's going on around them. Most wild binturongs are usually observed either pre-dawn or right after dusk, in those early hours of the morning or the early hours of the evening. They are very large for being an animal that lives up in trees. So their body is between 2 and 3 feet in length, with another 20 to 30 inches of tail beyond that. That being said, they can weigh anywhere as an adult from 20 pounds up to as much as 50 pounds, and one source I saw said 70 pounds, but I think that would probably be a very overweight binturong. But a 50-pound tree-dwelling animal is quite large, especially for being a non-primate. There are definitely some apes, and even some of the big monkeys can get up into that weight range as well. With binturongs, the females are typically 20% larger than the males. So usually in a binturong, that's going to be like 5 to 10 pounds heavier, and a little bit more bulky around and a little bit taller as you look at them. They are covered with a very long, shaggy hair. It's typically in the gray to black range scale, with maybe some white tips or lighter colored hair on different parts. That seems a bit odd for an animal that lives in a tropical rainforest, but their hair actually grows in a way that it helps drive water if they're getting rained on. It helps draw the water away from their body, and so it can drip down to the ground. There's a monkey species in South America that has very, very similar hair and coloring that does the same thing. They have kind of flat paws, so they walk kind of flat-footed. That's called plantigrade. That's how humans walk. We walk flat on our feet, and also how bears walk. And that's maybe one of the ways that people thought they were a bear in the early days, and how they got the name bear cat. They also have really long claws. Bears in Asia also have really long claws, as well as the cats, which is why they also got confused as being a cat. Their long claws are very helpful for them climbing. They can also use them to defend themselves, and sometimes to get some of their food, they'll use a claw to pull some of their food open, especially some of the big fruit like breadfruit or durian that grow in Southeast Asia. They have been known to eat both. They have really long whiskers on the front of their face, kind of like a cat does as well. Those can help them feel things. They definitely are very sensitive and have very strong nerves in those whiskers that can help them identify things. They have good vision both daytime and nighttime, although their eyes are kind of small. Their eyes are very bright, and you can see that they're looking around when you're up close and personal with them. They have a great sense of smell. That's mostly how they communicate with each other. And they also have good hearing. They make a wide range of different vocalizations, including growls, hisses, grunts, a high-pitched wail that sounds kind of like a house cat, snorts, and chuckles. I've never heard a chuckle, but I have heard the others from them. They are typically solitary. They're typically alone. Although a mom will tolerate her female offspring to stick around with her, and occasionally when there's a big tree with lots of ripe fruit on it, there may be several binturongs eating on that tree at the same time. They would usually be moms and daughters related, or a mom with young babies. They use their sense of smell to communicate mostly with each other in addition to their vocal communications. And they have very important scent glands near their tail. And as they walk, they leave a scent trail throughout their forest. And the odor produced by these scent glands reminds a lot of people of buttered popcorn. It kind of smells that way. I ended up getting a little too close to it too many times, and so it kind of ruined the illusion of buttered popcorn. But from a distance, I understand how it could smell a bit like buttered popcorn. But yeah, when you're a little closer to it, you start to get the parts of it that are not buttered popcorn in the mix. But it's certainly not the worst of smells coming from animals. And a buttered popcorn smell is usually a very delightful smell, and if an animal's going to make some sort of stinky smell to communicate with others of its kind from its body, buttered popcorn is not a bad way to go. When bear cats or binturongs meet up and breed, the gestation period is typically between 84 and 92 days, so right around 3 months. But the female binturong can do something really incredible that is possible in several other mammal species called delayed implantation. What that means is they breed and a fertilized egg exists, and then it just kind of hangs out in limbo for quite a while, up to several months in some species. I don't know in binturongs how long it can be because it hasn't been well documented. They know it happens, but they don't have a good window of time as to how long it can happen. But because of that, they can breed kind of any time of the year, but then they can time the babies to be born at a time when they start eating solid foods, that it's the most plentiful time for fruit and other foods that they would need in their home. They typically can have 2 babies. Is typical, 2 cubs, but it can be anywhere from 1 to 6. Most likely it's going to be 2, maybe 3. They're small at birth. They're only about 5 ounces, so itty bitty little guys, and their eyes are closed. They typically stay in like a den kind of setting, and mom stays really close to them for their first few weeks. About 6 to 8 weeks, they are ready to start moving around and explore with mom. Although they're still nursing for another 6 weeks or so, beyond that time. At that point, 6 to 8 weeks, they're already the size of house cats, so they grow pretty quick. And they will start following her around the forest looking for food. I think I can find a good video of some baby binturongs following their mom. Super cute. What else? They take typically smaller animals mature very quickly, and they take about 2.5 years before they're sexually mature, which is kind of a longer time for an animal of their size. Their lifespan in the wild can be up to about 18 years. In a captive setting in zoos, they can be into their mid-20s, so like 25. And throughout their home range, they are listed as vulnerable to extinction, with decreasing populations consistently across the board. There's no one area where they're doing super great. They seem to be on the decline kind of across the range, and most likely will be listed as endangered when they are next assessed. They have a lot of different threats facing them throughout their home range in Southeast Asia. In the northern part, it's a bit different than in the southern part. So the northern range countries, places like Vietnam, China, India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, all of those, their biggest threats are poaching and hunting of humans who are collecting them for a wide variety of reasons. Sometimes they're catching them to sell as pets, which I would not recommend. Sometimes they are hunting them to be eaten. Sometimes they're hunting them for their skins or their fur coats. And sometimes they are hunted for traditional medicine. I talked quite a bit about traditional medicine yesterday, but traditional medicine is something prevalent throughout many Asian cultures where they believe different parts of animals can help heal human ailments. Most that have been scientifically studied have absolutely no medicinal value at all, and it is a problem with many species across most of Asia. I talked quite a bit about it in yesterday's Critter Chat about langurs. Throughout the southern portion of Binturongs range, so that's going to be more the island countries of Indonesia, Malaysia, and part of that mainland Malay peninsula of Thailand, etc. A big problem for them in that area is habitat loss. Habitat loss is also a problem in the north, but hunting is more the bigger problem up there. With habitat loss, their forest home is being cut down for a wide variety of uses, sometimes to sell the wood to a variety of things, to be lumber or to be paper, but mostly to clear the forest out to grow something called palm oil. I've also talked about palm oil quite a bit before. I'll put some links about palm oil on the Facebook page later on today. Palm oil is a major threat to animals in Southeast Asia. It is a squishy little fruit that grows on very tall palm trees. The palm trees are native to West Africa, but they are prevalently grown in Malaysia and Indonesia, and they are used in many products consumed by humans, including food products, cosmetics, toiletries, household cleaning products, etc. It creates a very an oil that is highly desired, and palm oil is being grown even in protected areas. Enforcement of laws in many of these countries is very weak, and so even in like a national park where it's a protected area, people are still cutting down the forest and growing palm oil to sell to wealthy Americans and Europeans. So yeah, we should all become a little more aware of that, and we can all help out by making sure that the products we buy are using sustainable palm oil that is grown on land that has already been used for agriculture, and not new growth forest or old growth forest being cut down and new land that is being used for agriculture. Our special shout out today is a very unique organization that I found called abconservation.org. AB is specifically the scientific name for binturongs is Articus binturong. So AB is Articus binturong. Conservation. Oh, how do you find out? How do you find out about palm oil? I'll be sharing some information on the Facebook page later today. So watch for that link on the Zoonerd Facebook page. You can look for a little logo on products. Most products do not list it. Most companies aren't caring enough to do it. And as a consumer, we can vote by using our dollar and try to figure out ways that we can encourage companies to be a little more responsible. But I'll put up a whole thing. Also, you can go to the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo's website. They are the #1 world leading experts for conservation of palm oil related issues. They've really done a lot of great research. There's an app on your phone you can download. All sorts of great things, but I'll put a link up on the Facebook page, so watch for that. So AB Conservation does a lot of great work, specifically with binturongs. They are headquartered in France and the Philippines, where they are studying the Philippine subspecies of binturongs called the Palawan binturong. Palawan is an island in the Philippines, and they're really trying to document a little more of the wild science of the species, as also raising awareness with the local people and finding ways of how a binturong can survive in areas that can also benefit humans, and figuring out where those lines lay. As always, I like to talk a bit about my experience with the animals we talk about on Critter Chat, and I mentioned earlier that I had never heard of this animal until I was in college and saw it on a animal documentary on like Animal Planet. Later, when I was a zookeeper at the Los Angeles Zoo, I actually took care of binturongs as one of the species that I worked with. The photos I posted earlier today are the two binturongs that I worked with. The first one that's kind of laying down is a male. The one that is standing up is a female. You can see she's a little bit bigger than he is. They're super interesting animals to work with. He was very, very food motivated and would come running as soon as he knew you were in the area with food. Because of that, we had to always make sure that his main keeper could go in with him, because he and her knew each other very well. I was just one of the relief keepers, so I kind of helped out like when it was her weekend or if she took time off. And he did not know me as well, and I did not know him as well, so I never worked in the same space with him because he was very aggressive about food, and I didn't want to figure out how his big sharp teeth or his sharp claws felt. So always very careful to work around. I could hand feed him through the side of his fencing, and that was always super great because he was always very excited to come over and be near us as zookeepers. With the female and male, they sometimes got along really well and sometimes didn't get along so well. One thing that I found that was super interesting working with them in Los Angeles is that they really loved it when the weather was a bit cooler and cloudy, and especially if it was like a little drizzly rain. Most animals would kind of hate the rain and would want to go inside when it rained. The binturongs wanted to be out in their exhibit when it rained. As long as it wasn't a heavy rain and as long as it wasn't too cold, they actually enjoyed being out in the rain. And on hot days, we would actually turn on misters to add humidity to their environment to make them feel more like the tropical rainforest where they come from. But super cool animals to work with. And like I said, the buttered popcorn odor that their scent glands produce, when you're up close and cleaning up after them, it isn't as pleasant as it may seem. It does smell a bit like buttered popcorn, but once you're cleaning up after them and you're dealing with their poop and their pee, you also get those other scents mixed in, and it's not quite as enjoyable as the buttered popcorn myth makes it appear. But very cool animals. I'll be sharing some more videos and images of them later today on the Facebook profile, so watch out for that. And as always, feel free to like, share, follow, subscribe to any of my Zoo Nerd content across the platforms of YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and my website at jeremythezoonerd.com. That's all I have for you today, so be happy, be healthy, take care, and I'll see you again. Take care. Bye.